East
Well,
Coast.
we were probably about 10 miles from Bletchley. They were all in that vicinity, yeah, fairly close by.
Did you ever get a chance to visit Bletchley during the war?
Yeah,
during the war?
Yeah, they used to give us lectures there,
oh, okay.
you know, about what we were doing to kind of keep our, you know, spirits up, to think that we were doing something important.
And so theoretically, you could have run into
probably passed it
Alan
because
Turing.
they were all weirdos. I mean, you know, when you're used to uniform, these guys were in baggy corduroy pants, cycling around and looking like nothing on earth. They weren't smartly dressed with suits and ties and that kind of thing. So we did used to see a lot of them wandering around when we went, but we never were introduced to any of them.
Yeah.
We were much below them. They're out there, we're down there.
Yeah.
But we did all the doggy work.
When you said I missed a job, you missed a message.
Yeah, you missed getting decoding, you know.
Right.
I mean, that was a big thing.
So what would they threaten you with?
Well, they threatened us with jail, but touch wood, I never had to find out, so I'm glad I didn't. I don't know whether they really would have done that, but that's what they used to tell us. Scare the heck out of us, because we were kind of young and impressionable. Yeah, it was an experience I wouldn't have missed for anything. I feel very, you know, privileged to have been part of such a wide organisation. Little country girl.
So, you saw the movie about a week or so ago?
Yeah, just last Sunday.
Yeah.
Lynn taught me.
So, did you know what the movie was about before you went? Did you understand?
Yes.
But you understood it was more about his life?
Yeah, that was his life story, basically.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But you said that you had never met him. You never met him.
No.
But what did you hear about him when you were working there?
We never heard about him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We did go to Bletchley a few times. They used to show us, and they used to give us lectures and tell us what jobs we'd brought, you know, how we'd helped to break certain codes that were very important. One was the Scharnhorst. We found out where that was, and we had to send a reconnaissance plane over so that the Germans would think that's how they'd been spotted.
Right.
You see, we could never use it without having some backup, and we stopped Rommel's supplies from getting through. Those were the two main ones that I remember, and because of that, of course, he had to surrender, because he was much the better general than our general. Our British general was a big ass, you know, Montgomery. He was awful. My husband used to say he's horrible. He wasn't fit to be a general. He was a peacetime general, not a wartime general. But poor old Rommel, they all got cut off. We used to send planes over where his train was coming in and bomb it, and we kept all his supplies from getting to him. He had no choice but to surrender.
Whenever you, so you would read the code, you would understand what the movement was, what the military movement was. Then we had to send over reconnaissance. The British had to send over reconnaissance plane each time to mask.
Each time, yeah, to mask, so that they didn't realize. They'd say, "Hey, how the hell didn't they know we were here?"
Right.
You know, yeah, they had to be very careful. Few things they couldn't, and you know, they used to have to let go. But it said, I was just reading where it's in that thing there that was about one of the guys, the engineers, and he said sometimes we read the message before the person got it, who it was going to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they were that. Some of them were that fast because they relied on the people who were sending the messages were not supposed to ever be repetitive. They weren't supposed to start off like with the date or with something, but of course being human they did. And if they could find one of the guys, and they knew that every time he either gave the date or hi, how are you, or something like that, that would really give them a big opportunity to get started on the code.
I think that the way they portrayed it in the movie, there was a weather report. They said somebody would give the weather report first.
Yeah, first.
And then they'd say, aha.
You see, little things like that, which of course the Germans, you know, it's human error is what caused them to be able to break. If they had stuck to what they were supposed to do, we probably never would have cracked it. Yeah.
Could you tell us how you came to work at Gayhurst Manor?
Well, it's really funny because my husband said never volunteer in the military, never volunteer. Well, I went to Mill Hill for 6 weeks training just to be a Wren, and then we were told at the end of 6 weeks we could get out if we were volunteer service. You see, nobody was
okay.
ever...
So you volunteered for the Wren.
Yes.
And they chose you for the Gayhurst Manor service.
No, we had a choice of at the end of the 6 weeks what we'd like to do. So this particular thing was called P5, Pembroke 5. And if we took it, if we volunteered for it, we weren't allowed to know what it was until we started training for it. And of course we were intrigued, obviously. Right. Always said, yeah, we've got to go for that. So I've got a picture there of the 4 of us. I'd met 3 girls in training and we went through the whole thing together, the 4 of us.
So you were what age when you went into the Wren?
I was 20.
And did you join the Wren because your friends were, or because you saw an ad, or you wanted to get out of the house? Why did you...
My husband went abroad. He was sent to North Africa. I didn't see him for 3 years. And I thought, I'm going to be lonely. I can't date. You know, I was only 20. What was I going to do? I thought, I'll join the Wrens and I'll always have company.
That's the answer.
And I did, and I've never regretted it. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the Wren. They always say a bunch of women together can never get along. We never had any. There were 10 of us in a room, 5 monks, and got along beautifully.
The women of the Wren were in this...
We were 40, I think, I'm trying to think. I think we had 40 Wrens to a watch, and we had 4 watches.
Okay. So how many of those original Wrens working in Enigma project are still alive today?
Oh God. Well, we go for a reunion every year.
Yeah.
And last year there were 50.
Okay.
But the first year I went, which was about 10 years ago, there were 500.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, see, you had to be 18 to go in. So as you can tell, we're all in our late 80s, early 90s. So, you know, they're dying off like flies.
Yeah.
So what kind of testing, you said when you finished with the training you were given a lot of options, and you went with this because you thought it was intriguing.
We went to Gayhurst. We took 6 weeks training on the machines. After we volunteered, went to Eastcote, and when we got there, the officer who was going to train us wasn't there. Well, we had to put our own bunks up because it was a new facility, and there were 4 of us, and we all wanted a top bunk. So we hurriedly put 40. One collapsed in the night, but nobody was hurt. And all the plugs had been taken out of the bathtubs. We never figured that one out. We had to buy a bath plug before we could have a bath. And they didn't have showers.
Did you have to have any skills, like mathematical or analytical skills to do this job?
No. And I don't understand how they got through the security, because nobody ever told me that anybody went around looking into my past.
Well, that's what I was wondering, whether they had, they give you any psychological testing, or they did any background testing?
No, they just sent us for training, and I guess if you took the training and you passed, you were okay.
Well, maybe when you first got into the military, they did a little background check.
No.
No?
Well, not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, oh, somebody came asking about you, you know?
Right.
So I don't know, because, you know, it was so secret, you'd think they'd want to know your background.
Right. Right.
Yeah, she said she was always puzzled why they chose her, because didn't you say a lot of the other Wrens were a little more upper class?
we had ladies and honourables who were in the Tatler, in the Wrens, and my son always said that was why we got our rooms cleaned. We didn't have to clean our own rooms. I was just like a Wren, just a little Wren. And all our laundry was done, and I've been told since that it was because we were supposed to have a very stressful job, and that's why that was done. But my son said it was because we had all these ladies and they wouldn't know how to do it.
Oh.
They'd all had maids, and most of them had been to boarding schools, you know, public schools as we call them over there. Yeah.
Did you, but you said you didn't feel it was stressful.
No, I didn't. I really didn't, no.
Could you explain to me exactly what you did, step by step, what your part was, and how the messages came in, and step by step where they went to?
Well, you've seen these big machines.
Right.
Well, at the back, they would send us, everything was on teletype.
Right.
And they would send us what we call a menu.
Yeah, that's
now,
what I was wondering what that is.
I can't really describe it to you, but I know it used to be a square with things sticking out. And I couldn't plug one in now if you asked me, because that's a long time ago. But we plugged the back, and the front had to be set like ZZA, ZZB, ZZC, right through the alphabet. And we had, I think it was 6, 2, 2, and 2 drums, all different colours. And they all had brushes. And you had to be careful you didn't get a short. You had to check your drums every time and at 2 o'clock in the morning, can you imagine us checking these to make sure there was, you know, your eyes were sort of a pair of tweezers to make sure, because they told us if that ever happened we would be in serious trouble, because they could tell that we'd missed a job because of it, you know. Yeah.
By job you mean a message?
The message, yeah.
A coded message.
Yeah, and then as I said, when it stopped there was these things at the side, and you took those letters and you put them into that checking room, and that was like you know, like the Enigma machine. It was built like, so when you pressed a letter, another letter came up. So if the setting was right, that would decode, and that would go round the menu, and then we'd call and say, yeah, that one did. If it didn't go round the menu, we used to have to call and say, no, there's something wrong there. It didn't. But most times it was job up. Yeah, I don't remember many times when it didn't go round. And not just one machine on that particular job. I forget how many machines they had altogether. A big place where what was the name of the Eastcote, where we trained. It was a great big long corridor with, you know, things out full of machines. Yeah, and then they had another one at Stanmore. That was a big one. Ours was a small one. No, 6 weeks training at Mill Hill, and then 6 weeks, no, 2 weeks training at Mill Hill, 6 weeks training at Eastcote. That was 6 weeks after the November.
So maybe January of 44 you started?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That sounds, yeah. Yeah, I came out on just after VE Day in 45, June of 45.
Okay.
They gave us welding machines, welding irons and things, and we took the machines apart at the end.
Okay, so so you got the message via Morse code.
No, we didn't, Bletchley.
She got the message she got the letters on the, they call it the bomb. The Christopher machine
Right.
is called the bomb. And then
We got a menu to set up the bomb. We had to set it up.
right, and then
And
you get the message and read it.
Yeah,
And then you would put it in the checking room,
yeah,
and someone in the checking room would check it.
yeah.
And then,
Again?
okay, so first you set up the menu
Yeah, at the back.
at the back.
There those
And how
plugs.
did you get the menu? This was a daily.
It was over the teletype.
This was daily.
Daily, oh yeah, daily, yeah.
So that came from Bletchley.
It came from Bletchley
By teletype.
teletype.
For you to
Everything
set
was
up the
done by
menu.
teletype, yeah.
Okay.
No phones.
So then the machine would go, and when it
When it
stopped,
stopped.
you would read the letters at the side.
Mhm.
And if you were the bomb operator, then you would take those letters to the checking
Check.
room and
And
leave
wait.
it for somebody else,
Yeah,
right?
and wait and see whether it went through or not. They
Okay,
used
but
to do it
somebody
right
else-
away.
Somebody else would be on the Enigma
Yeah.
machine checking
Yeah,
it.
we used to be able to go on the checker once or twice because it was a lot
Okay.
easier on you. Yeah.
Okay.
So we all had a turn at doing everything.
Okay.
Because they've got a bomb running at Bletchley now.
Oh, do they?
And I think that caused my deafness.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I didn't realize how loud it was. when I was young, I didn't, now I'm a fanatic about loudness. But when you think that one sounded awfully loud to me and we had 10 going at the same time, it must have been, I mean, I can't imagine why we didn't notice it. I really don't.
You just got used to it, probably.
So
it's just a loud clicking sound or humming
click,
sound?
Click,
or was
click, 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 but very loud.
You tell us about these lectures that were meant to keep you motivated.
Well, these lectures were telling us what we'd done, you know,
what you had accomplished.
Yeah, what we had, like as I said, the Scharnhorst and Rommel. Those are the two main ones that seemed really important. And they said that we probably took 2 years off the war, and that would save millions of people.
So you knew you were aiding the war effort, but you didn't know that you were solving a super secret cipher.
Oh yes, we knew that.
You knew that?
Oh yes. And we were threatened with jail if we ever disclosed it. When we came out, we had to sign the Securities Act to say we would not. And apparently it wasn't until, I think it said in that thing there, 1974, somebody was allowed to write a book. And once, of course, they wrote the book, then it started, you know, building up. And then I was able to tell my husband what I had done. I didn't tell him. And he wasn't interested.
So you knew on a daily basis that you were actually working on the German code, and that you were having results because of that. So what was the part that you didn't know until 30 years later?
No, we knew it all the time. We weren't allowed to tell anybody else for 30 years.
I get it.
Because they didn't want the Germans to know. I think Churchill thought he might have to use it against the Russians for some reason. I don't know why, but he didn't want it.
Okay, so you knew what you were doing, but you weren't allowed to tell. But you didn't know.
But we weren't allowed to tell anybody else. No. And nobody asked, you know, when I look back and I think they thought I was a writer because I'd been a secretary.
Oh,
you know,
really?
I think automatically it's, oh yes. So I never had to lie to anybody.
What was your reaction when you found out it was now open in the public, your secret was no longer a secret, and you could tell people? Did you go around saying, hey, me, I did part of that?
No, I never did anything. I mean, you know, it was every day for us. It was what we did in the war.
Right.
My husband, funnily enough, was on the tops of mountains taking the Morse messages and sending them to Bletchley, but of course he didn't know he was in Enigma. He was never told.
When you finally talked to your husband about this,
he wasn't interested. Not a bit. He hated the war, he hated the army, hated being in the army, and he was at Dunkirk, poor lad. He had to swim because they were machine gunning the beaches, you know. Yeah. And he was a good swimmer, so he dove in the water, and an American ship picked him up and took him back to England.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he was in North Africa. He had malaria, he had yellow jaundice, he had dysentery, he had erysipelas, he had a scorpion bite. I thought, why don't they send him home? He's not much good. But when he'd had all that, I guess they figured he was good. Good to go. So then he went to Italy, and he was there for the rest of the war. We had from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4. Right. 4 till midnight, midnight till 8 in the morning. But the midnight shift always went on at 11:30 because we were all sitting around waiting to go on. So we always relieved the. But that was the worst shift. But we had a lot of time.
Why was that the worst?
Because in the middle of the night you're tired. You know, you go and we used to have to sleep all day, ready for the next night. And then one time we decided we were fed up with sleeping, so we went to the movies and we all fell asleep in the movies. We'd never tried that one again. We used to cycle. We had cycles there sent down, and we had one of the honourables had her own horse. She had it stabled close by.
Really?
In 1944, you appeared to be getting bored and wanted to be transferred to another station.
Yeah, I wanted to go to
and they wouldn't let you?
Where they were breaking the Japanese codes at Woburn Abbey. And she came and interviewed us on D-Day. Suping her name was, I'll never forget her. And I saw her at one of the reunions and I told her how mean she'd been.
Oh.
That was really nice to be able to do that.
Yes, I'm sure.
She told us how unpatriotic we were asking for a transfer on D-Day. We said we didn't know it was going to be D-Day. Nobody knew it was going to be D-Day. But for about 3 or 4 weeks before D-Day, we weren't allowed to go more than 25 miles away. But of course, being in the service, you don't bother with that. We used to have our civilian clothes sent and go and change in the station, go to where we wanted to go, come back, get back in our uniform. It didn't do any good.
You were a little bit of a rebel?
Well, I think we all were in the service because, you know, they were very stringent and you got a bit fed up sometimes. But one time, this was really hilarious. It was just before D-Day and an officer came and put up a sign, all Wrens clothing must be held up until the Navy's needs are satisfied. Well, you can take that how you like. And we all roared with laughter. We didn't like the second officer because she didn't know what we were doing.
Oh.
She was the second officer for the house, you know, while we were in the house, we were under her. And she came and looked and grabbed it down and reworded it. We had a lot of laughs. I mean, we really did. We had a good time.
Did bombers or the rockets ever come near Gayhurst Manor?
No, no, no. The only time I nearly got killed by a German was in the village, in our village. I went to a dance. They had Americans stationed there, and they had an American hospital in the village, and I used to go on leave. This is where I'd been brought up. So when I went on leave, because my mother had given up her apartment in London and was living down there anyway, and of course the Americans always wanted to take you home, you know, and in a village, if you're seen walking out of a room with an American, your name is, you know, it's gone, your reputation. Thought my husband comes back, you know, and they say, oh, she went out with a Yank, you know. So I used to creep out before the last dance and quietly trot away. And one time I was followed, and I was scared. And I got to the end of a row of houses, and there was a big house that was there before my house, with a big lawn in the front. So I thought, I better stop here so I can scream. And I turned and I faced the guy, and I said, because it was blackout, I couldn't see who it was. What do you want? And, you know, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were somebody else. But then I just got in the house, 5 minutes, and I heard put, 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 and it was a machine gunner going down the side of the village. And if I'd been out, if I'd waited for the last dance, I'd have been in a doorway, and that's where he shot and went up the other side of the village. I think he thought it was an airfield with the lights from the dance.
Was it actually like a German paratrooper who was...
No, it was just a guy in a plane with a machine gun. But they used to machine gun children on playgrounds. They were horrible.
Well, how is that related to the person who was following you?
Nothing to do with the person who was following me. No, I don't know. I never did find out who that was.
Okay.
But my husband bought me a little gun. I never had it loaded, but I used to think it might frighten somebody. Oh dear. And of course in London in the blackout we used to run into sandbags and things and apologise thinking we'd run into somebody. Yeah. When we got one of those pea soup fogs, it was awful. Yeah. No lights anywhere. I mean nothing, not a blink anywhere. Oh, and I used to go up to London on a sleeping out pass because my father had he lived in London in an apartment. And this time I lost my Liberty Pass. Now this was this was really something because this is a secret place. And Bernstein, she was petty officer, she knew me, you know, she'd seen me around, but she read me the Riot Act. She said, if you were a sailor, we'd put you in irons. I thought, oh my God. So anyway, she kept on, so I finally picked up my gas mask case. Now we were stupid, we were young and stupid. We took her gas masks out when we went on a sleeping out pass and put put our toiletries and a clean pair of underpants and a clean... We had beautiful starch collars. The uniform was lovely. Yeah, it really was a nice uniform. And so I picked it up and started to walk to the door, and she said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "If you're not going to let me in, I'm going home." "Oh, come on," she said. Oh dear, when I look back I think honestly, and it was always hair. You weren't allowed to have your hair on your collar. I had a beautiful page boy, and there's no way I was going to cut that beautiful page boy. And I used to roll it up real tight, and it used to be off my collar. But in the English damp weather, you know, by midday it was on my... And the officer said she would remember me because I looked like a Francis. And I thought, how can I look like a Francis? I've only been a Francis for 11 months.
Whatever that meant. What would a Francis look like?
She did remember me, and I can't think, "Get your hair cut, Francis." So in the end, I used to have, when I was there, I used to have to roll it up on a nylon stocking. It looked absolutely horrible with my hat on the top like a pimple, you know. "Oh, that's much better, Francis," she said. I thought, "Oh, you lie."
Okay.
What, you liked the movie?
I liked the movie, yeah. I have a feeling they were a little harsh on him. But you see, I don't really know. I do know that, I mean, people who did know him do say that he was a loner and he didn't really work as a team, which I think they brought that out pretty clearly in the movie.
Did you see yourself in the movie?
No, I don't think they showed the Wrens doing it, did they? They only showed the men trying it out.
Right.
They never actually showed anybody doing it after they found out, did they?
No.
So you never looked and said, "Oh, that was me"?
No, definitely not.
The machine that they were working on in the movie is similar to the machine you work with?
Yes, that's exactly that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because they have one at Bletchley, so they're able to predict that very accurately. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, they didn't mention that we had outstations. They only mentioned Bletchley all the time. But as it was Alan Turing, he was only at Bletchley, so I guess there was no need to talk about the.
How many outstations did similar work to yours?
Well, Waverley, Crawford, and us. I think we were the 3 outstations, apart from Stanmore and Eastcote, which were really enormous facilities. And that's where the Americans worked out the big ones. 8 in the morning till 4. And then we have 24 hours off duty. And then we go back and we go on the 4 o'clock watch until midnight, which I said usually was 11:30, but it was supposed to be midnight. And then after that, we'd have another couple of days off. And then we would go on nights after that. And then we would, when we came off nights, we'd come off nights at 8 in the morning and go back on again 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
So that was tough that day. But then we had 5 days, what they called standoff, and we could go home. Each week we did, everybody had to do we did a day shift one week and a night shift the next, and a midnight shift the next, and then to go back again to day shift.
But why wasn't it a permanent schedule? Why didn't you, like the whole month, always work the morning shift and someone else always worked the night shift?
Well, no, it wouldn't be fair.
Oh, okay, so that was the reason.
Well, I think so. I mean, nobody would want to do the permanent night shift. Nobody that I know would want to do that. Because really your eyes used to droop even though you'd had a lot of sleep, because it wasn't normal to be awake all that time and have to be aware of what you were doing, you know. You had to be on the ball at all times.
During the 30 years when you weren't allowed to speak of the project, your work, did you ever say, "I wish I could tell somebody"?
No, never. I just didn't think about it at all.
You just went on with your life.
Wondering why they're making such a fuss, and it suddenly came out. Oh wow, I was in on that. I didn't realise it was that important.
But you were told that you perhaps shortened the war by 2 years by.
I know, but they didn't tell us that at the time.
You learned that later.
They didn't tell us that at the time.
I
That's
see.
come out since. That
I
they
see.
They figured that we did, because part way through they'd started breaking the regular codes, and then they suddenly put on an extra drum for the naval codes. Well, that was a big thing, and it took them a few months to connect that so that we could have 4 drums instead of 3, and we finally did, and they said it dropped the tonnage from hundreds to just a few thousand, you know, thousands to just a couple of hundred. Once we knew where the U-boats were, we could let the ships know where the U-boats were, and they would veer and go another way.
In the movie, there was a dramatic scene in which Alan Turing told one of his colleagues, "We cannot save that ship. We do not want to tell that ship."
We didn't have time to send a plane over.
Oh, okay. So by the time you were familiar with it, well, you were familiar with it from the beginning, but you were able to save people's lives as a result of warnings. They could veer off from the U-boat trajectory.
Yeah, if we had it in time, we had to have enough time so that we could. We sent recce planes everywhere. We'd give them the coordinates to fly over.
What kind of planes do you call them?
There were
reconnaissance.
Reconnaissance.
Reconnaissance planes.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, they were very vital to the whole thing.
Even though they weren't actually useful in the sense, they were all for cover.
Yeah, they were involved, and if as long as the Germans had seen a recce plane, they would expect to be bombed then. It was a very sad time, but you know, you just, it's like me here, I'm stuck here, I'm housebound until they get me an apartment with a ramp.
Right.
So it's patience,
Right.
day by day, and just let it go. So the same thing with you in the Wrens, you know, you just went through the notion. We used to go horseback riding on when we were on the evening shift. We had a wonderful equestrian leader. He was an Irishman, and he had beautiful horses, and he taught us to lead a horse, you know, because a horse will follow another horse.
Right.
Very hard to get them to lead sometimes. And I was, when I went home on leave, they had horses for rent, and I took one, and it was used to Americans, and it would only go so far, and it would want to turn back again.
Really?
Yeah, it was really funny, and I wouldn't let it. It took me about 10 minutes to make it go on. I wanted my full hour.
Yeah.
And they can be stubborn.
The day-to-day basis, what made it difficult?
I didn't really think about it, but I do think about it now, and I think it must have been very monotonous.
Yeah.
I don't remember feeling that way when I was doing it. And I think the thing was that, as I said, they told us what we were doing, and we realized it was important, so we kind of put up with it, you know, didn't make a big issue about it.
So what was the hardest thing to put up with?
Night shift.
The night
that
shift.
was the hardest thing for me, yeah.
So what kind of threats did they make during
Yeah,
those
they
times?
did tell us we'd go to jail if we missed, and if they found out, because if it came up on another machine that was running the same job that we were, they'd know that we hadn't brought it up. So we knew that they could sometimes figure out. Touch wood, never happened to me. I was very cautious, but sometimes you know, when those brushes, they catch the one next to it. The little metal brushes about that big, and there were 26 of them, and then another 26. All for the letters of the alphabet.
Oh.
Yeah, 20. Everything was in 26s, and so you've got 26 on your thing there, and you've got to make sure that everyone is separated.
Oh.
A lot of the girls were Oxford and Cambridge bound. You know, they were really bright people. And some of them worked as civilians at Bletchley. They weren't all in the service. And I know the WAFs had a hut there where they plotted different things. I don't know what they actually did, but so I know that the other services were involved. But we were mostly for the machines. I don't think they ever worked the machines. We were the ones the Wrens were the ones that worked the machines.
What else was difficult about the job?
Well, having my husband away for 3 years, was difficult.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun. The Americans used to come 70 miles to pick us up to go to a dance.
Oh, really?
Oh yes, and we went for the food. At least I went for the food. I wasn't interested in the men. I wasn't interested. They had fresh fruit and they had ice cream, stuff we hadn't seen since the beginning of the war. So we used to love that. And they were very friendly. They used to come to our dances. But one time, one of them was hanging from the chandelier and another one was sick in the second officer's bedroom. So we weren't allowed to invite the Americans after that for a while. And when we had punch, you know, we'd only have fruit punch. You know, all the little flasks you can imagine used to be very potent by the end of the evening. we had a lot of fun, you know. We made you have to make your own fun when you're in something like that.
Wanted to do
Yeah,
after your shift, after or before your shift.
Yeah.
But obviously you were expected to be really sharp on
I
your
have to
shift.
be back by a certain time.
So he obviously came up with the idea for the machine.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
then who built the machines?
IBM.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then after that, then you all did all the work. The people.
They were already working when we got there. Yeah.
But I mean, the Wrens and you were the ones who were really doing all the work on
Yeah,
it.
we were doing all the machine work. Yeah.
And what? And how big was the bomb?
The bomb?
How big was the bomb?
Oh God.
Was it like the big, huge computers that they show, and in the movie like
Yeah,
that it was
exactly
just
like that.
almost
Yeah.
the,
Almost.
the,
You know,
the
you
height,
had to reach up to
the height
put
of
the drums on. Yeah. Oh yeah, not enormous. And we had RAF that maintained them. If they, you know, they'd go out of order. They always used to laugh and say a gremlin had got in when they went out of order. And the guy, and then we'd think, oh, that's nice. I can have a little break now.
Yeah.
So
How much maintenance did they need?
not a lot, not a lot. We had one. They all had names of scientists, and the worst one the one I remember the most was Henri, and he was always breaking down. We didn't like being on his really, but because it broke down a lot. But I don't know why there was just that one. I don't remember the others breaking down. Because, you know, they would have German interpreters. Once you'd broken the code, it would be in German, and that would go then over to a German. You didn't have to decode it. So, you know, the different bungalows, every bungalow was doing something different. Now, there were rumours, but nobody ever actually said it was true, and somebody said it wasn't true, that Churchill knew when Coventry was going to be bombed, but they didn't have time to send reconnaissance planes over, and they had to let it go. Now I know that's true because they devastated Coventry, you know. I mean, it was just, it was awful. But I'm amazed at how much of London was still left after they bombed for how many months? About 6 months, I think, night after night after night.
Did any of your old homes get bombed?
Yeah, the funny thing is, there was a ghost in this apartment where we lived. And somebody had come out, had committed suicide in it. It was 23 Besborough Street. And I went back, it was during the war or after the war. During the war, I think, at one point, I was back there. And when we went, 23, by direct hit, just like that. Nothing else on either side was damaged. 23 was just bombed out. So I thought the poor old ghost has got nowhere to go now. Because a lot of them are dead.
So the only inconsistency you saw was that the numbers were in the wrong place on the machines.
That was the only thing I noticed as a technical problem. Yeah.
But everything else rung true to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think they did a good job.